Is it possible to go from absolutely zero to a full planche in less than 5 months? In this video, I'm going to talk about my student Joshua and how over the course of 5 months, we were able to take his planche level from a tuck all the way to a full planche. We're going to go into detail about everything, the specific program we used, the specific challenges we faced, and the overall thought process behind why I was coaching him the way I was. It's important to note that I will be showing you guys the actual programs that we were implementing, but do not think that you can just use them and get the same results, okay? These programs were specifically curated for Joshua and his weaknesses. And so let's take it all back to middle of July when Joshua came across me on Instagram and reached out to me and said that he was interested in becoming a student of mine. At this time, Joshua could not perform one freestanding handstand push-up. He could hold a tuck planche for roughly 10 seconds. He could barely hold a straddle front lever, and he had a pretty consistent handstand of around 10 to 15 seconds. His biggest goals were achieving the planche, front lever, and one-arm handstand. 2 of the 3 we managed to achieve in under 5 months. With all of my students, before we begin working together, I make sure to ask them to send me videos of their current strength level. And so after seeing Joshua's tuck planche and front lever at the time, I was able to really hone in on his weaknesses. As you can see from this tuck planche hold, although Joshua is holding it, if you pay attention to his shoulder position, it is in a neutral position. Ideally in planche, we want to have a more protracted position. However, usually people with this type of archetype who tend to be more sagged in at the scapula have much higher degrees of what we call dead strength, which means straight arm strength, which means although they lose protraction and they have a closer distance to the ground, they are much more comfortable in that position. They have higher degrees of straight arm strength. And so after noticing this in Joshua's planche form, I knew that we could push the limit when it came to planche progressions and he would be able to handle it despite having poor protraction. And so I wanted to see to what extent we could really push those limits. We'll get into that and the programming side of things later. In terms of his front lever, he was just all around weak. There was no real big weaknesses that stuck out to me when it came to his retraction or anything like that. He was just in general weak when it came to his front lever. And so now let's get into what the first month of the training looked like. Initially, we made the decision to just purely focus on his handstand push-up because one of Joshua's goals at the time was to achieve a freestanding handstand push-up. And so at this time, we did no planche work. We specifically focused on a freestanding handstand push-up. However, on the pull side of things, we did do front lever. And so for this first month, we focused mainly on handstand push-up negatives, pike push-ups, and just a lot of frequent balance work. Because at the end of the day, most people cannot do a handstand push-up because of their lack of balance. And so that's why we made sure to stress the importance of balance over the course of this month. Joshua was able to achieve the freestanding handstand push-up that month, but for this part of the video, I want to more focus on the front lever side of things because the majority of this video, we're going to be talking about the subsequent months where we focused on planche. For front lever, we followed this type of format. We would start trainings with straddle attempts because at the time he could barely hold a bad form straddle. And so my thought process behind this was, let's constantly retest Joshua to the next progression while building volume in a progression that he can tolerate and do with perfect activations. And so his front lever sessions at the time would start with sets of front lever attempts with longer rest periods, mainly focusing on trying to hold the position. I told him that form breakdown was completely okay and we should not stray away from that. We want to completely overload the central nervous system with these attempts. And also very important to note is that I told him to auto-regulate. So if he went into his front lever session and he could barely do one attempt with any sort of volume, I would tell him to skip it entirely. And on days he felt really good, I would tell him to do way more than the sets that I initially prescribed. So although you're looking at this program on the screen and you're seeing everything written out with all the rest times, understand that everything would be changing on a day-to-day basis based on his intuition and how he felt that day. And so after the straddle attempts, we would move into advanced tuck volume accumulation. This is where he would do sets of advanced tuck that would progressively get closer to that higher intensity interval, but the main focus here was on having proper activations and just building time in that front lever position. Then at the end of the training, we would focus on building strength through a larger range of motion, utilizing more dynamic movements. And so this structure allowed him to get the straddle front lever really, really fast. I believe that month he was already holding clean straddle front lever for around 5 to 6 seconds. And so after that initial month or two, we now focused on his planche training and made an update to his front lever program. Let's talk about the planche training and how I had him start off. So after he achieved multiple repetitions of freestanding handstand push-up, we decided that it was time to go all in with his planche. And so on screen, I'm going to throw up his planche program that we followed initially. So to slowly introduce Joshua to the planche side of things, we started with advanced tuck work. Now, in my opinion, the advanced tuck planche is the most important progression that you will utilize on your planche journey. Our focus here was to build up as much time under tension as we could and develop the proper understanding of the planche. With the advanced tuck planche, that's the first time that you open up your knees and your core starts to engage. Also, the lean changes quite dramatically. And judging from our initial screening, I assumed that Joshua could handle this degree of lean because he already displayed high amounts of dead strength or straight arm strength. And turns out I was right. When we started this, I was quite surprised at how well he could hold the advanced tuck. Despite having poor protraction, he was still able to hold the position. And so our goal with the advanced tuck was to purely refine his shoulder positioning. And so all of the push-centric sessions started with advanced tuck planche holds. Afterwards, you will see that we go into handstand push-ups because at this time we still wanted to maintain those neural connections and coordination that he has acquired with the handstand push-up fresh. Now the third exercise you see will be Zanetti presses. Everyone does the Zanetti press wrong. The goal with the Zanetti press is to not lose the protraction. Many people, when they do their Zanetti presses, their shoulder positioning ends up sliding back and they're doing the Zanetti press with the shoulder that's retracted. Now, I specifically told Joshua, when you're doing your Zanetti presses, use a lighter weight than you think because you already have really strong straight arm strength. We just need to refine that protracted and depressed position. And so when I told him to lay on the bench, I told him to over exaggerate that and make sure that he never lost that shoulder positioning. The last exercise is also banded scapula push-ups. Now, this exercise is useless in terms of developing any sort of strength when it comes to the planche, right? You often hear people disregard this exercise, even the Zanetti press, right? But every exercise that I selected for him has a purpose. Like I said, from our initial screening, I identified his key bottlenecks that he's been struggling with for so long. And now we're utilizing exercises that specifically target those bottlenecks. The banded scapula push-ups are not there to build strength and protraction. It's not going to do any of that. It's simply for Joshua to be able to develop a mind-muscle connection to keep the proper shoulder positioning, which is his biggest problem at this moment in time. I also put them at the end of the workout because I want him to be able to hold that protracted position despite feeling tired. Because if I threw this in earlier, maybe before the Zanetti presses or before the handstand push-ups, it would be no problem for him. It would be a piece of cake. But I want him to understand the sensation of the proper shoulder positioning despite already being fatigued. At this time, we were training the planche 3 times a week as well as training the front lever 3 times a week and incorporating grease the groove with planche leans between each planche session. So basically, I told Joshua throughout the day, just do planche leans at a relatively light intensity and focus on all of the mental cues that we discussed. Stay tall, long arms, and really exaggerate being as far away from the ground as possible. Because I knew that if Joshua was able to maintain height in his planche, coupled with his immense amount of straight arm strength, that he would be able to planche with absolutely no issues. See, with planche, it's important to just identify where your bottleneck is and just systematically work away at it. All of the exercises we have, whether it's banded scapula push-ups, planche progressions, Zanetti press, whatever it is, pseudo planche push-ups, presses, whatever it is, look at these exercises as our tools that we have to go and fix the problem. You're not going to use a hammer to wash your window, right? If your window is dirty, you're not going to use a hammer to wash your window. You're going to take a cloth and some water and wipe it down. And so this is another mistake I see many people make with their planche is they're trying to use the wrong tool to fix their problem. If you start viewing things that way with, okay, I'm going to use this exercise, and you have a genuine sophisticated reason behind it, you're going to progress much faster versus just throwing random stuff into your workout hoping for the best. And so I'll just briefly cover his front lever. With front lever, we started doing full front lever negatives because in the first month and a half or 2 months, he was able to already hold clean straddle for roughly 5 to 8 seconds. And so we started implementing front lever negatives for his central nervous system to get a feeling for the next progression. We also coupled that with volume accumulation, but not with advanced tuck this time, or straddle even, but with full front lever banded holds. And so it's a very similar structure to before, but we just swapped out the progressions and threw in banded work to refine his full front lever connection. Also, it's very important to note that I tell him to auto-regulate everything. Everything you see in the program that I've written out, he does not follow it to a T. He is auto-regulating based on how he feels and what his intuition is telling him. And so now let's move on to a roughly month 3.5 of his planche and front lever training. At this time, he was already able to achieve a full front lever, and we were now working on building more volume in the front lever position and then starting presses. But this video is about planche, so we're gonna mainly talk about planche at this current moment. So now we're getting into fun territory, and we're gonna utilize the same type of approach that we use for his front lever in his planche. At this point, at roughly month 3, we started to incorporate the straddle planche. Now, everyone's gonna say straddle planche has different connection, has different mind-muscle connection with lower body. It's all cope, okay? At the end of the day, you're not gonna have a full planche without a solid straddle planche, okay? Don't think you can just skip past the straddle planche, because you're not gonna have a good time trying to get the full planche without building solid volume in the straddle planche. So, similar to his front lever, we started the planche day now with straddle planche attempts. Again, telling him to auto-regulate based on how he felt. If he felt horrible, he would do no attempts. If he felt great, he would do more attempts than I listed out. If he felt average, he would do what was listed on the program. Again, with the attempts, we had longer rest periods to allow for full force attempts. We want to really overload the central nervous system and force those neural adaptations. Following the straddle holds was banded straddle holds. Now you're probably wondering, why not do advanced tuck, right? If our goal is to just build volume here and get proper mind-muscle connection, and that's exactly where I'm gonna stop you, because when I first saw Joshua straddle planche, I realized that he really did not understand the movement. He had no clue of how to activate properly body position when it related to his lower body as well as his upper body. And so we decided to use banded straddle holds. Now, I told him to go quite heavy with the resistance bands when it came to these holds, because our goal here was to build up 70 to 90 seconds of volume in clean straddle planche form. You're probably wondering, well, why 70 to 90 seconds? We did testing and we found out that this is an appropriate number for him. Now, again, it's going to be case by case difference, right? Whether you're taller, shorter, heavier, lighter, it's all going to depend on how much volume you can tolerate. But this was a sweet spot that I figured out for Joshua. And so the goal with the straddle planche banded holds was to refine technique, refine the mind-muscle connection, and reinforce good habits so that when he does do his attempts next session, he can use the data that his brain gathered from the long volume we accumulated with the banded holds and then apply that into his intense holds. This is my whole ideology behind static skill coaching, is that we throw something really intense at you and we try to force your body to hold that position, and then we go back and we reinforce good habits, good activations, so that in your next set of attempts you know already how it feels like to be in that position with perfect form and activation. To no surprise, week by week we saw his attempts improve extremely fast. I mean, this is unbelievable. He basically mastered the straddle planche in like 3 weeks. He went from barely being able to hold it with a band, let alone, to holding it for like 5 seconds so fast. It was unbelievable to see. And I know that we perfectly nailed the volume down, because that was the number one thing that I was worried about. I was worried about, okay, is this too much volume for him? Because at this point we were still training front lever, doing one arm handstand, doing planche. So I wanted to make sure that we balanced all of the fatigue buildup. And I'm really happy that I managed to find the sweet spot for him, because his rate of progression was extremely fast. Now, again, coupling the fatigue management with the specificity portion of things, we were able to blow past straddle planche extremely fast. Now, also the last exercise you'll see will be barbell planche push-ups. This is something that we both agreed to throw in for fun. We were experimenting and we were trying new things out. Hindsight, honestly, it was a poor selection. I would have much rather threw in something like pseudo planche push-ups, maybe a cluster set with pseudo planche push-ups and planche leans, but we both agreed that we would test it, see how it felt, and I think we both came to the conclusion that it was not it. Also, it's important to note that Joshua's training was structured as planche, front lever, rest, planche, and front lever, rest, and then an optional rest based on how he felt. So if he felt like he was tired and needed more rest, he would take that extra rest day. Now, on his front lever and planche day, we were more focused on pushing the front lever while maintaining what we had with the planche. So just simply doing body weight advanced tuck holds, building up volume, nothing crazy, just trying to push the front lever a little bit more, because with front lever from coaching, I realized that you can push front lever way more than you can the planche, because I believe that the front lever generates overall less systemic fatigue compared to something like the planche. And so that was my whole idea, with still pushing the front lever on the day where he did both front lever and planche, while keeping the planche kind of toned down. Because I believed if we tried to push the planche on that day, we would not have seen the progress that we did. And so now let's move on to month 4 and 5. At this point, Joshua was already holding front lever for 5 to 8 seconds and doing 2 presses, so we decided to start front lever combination work. We are now currently actively working on unlocking Joshua's front lever touch, front lever pull-up, and just in general expanding his volume when it comes to front lever and dynamic related movements. Now for planche, this is where things take off. So after that quick 3-week span where Joshua was able to get the straddle planche on lock, we decided to not waste any time and go straight for full planche. Now before that, you're probably wondering, are there any deloads that I implemented? Yes, I did implement deloads. So at the end of every 5 to 6 weeks, we implemented a deload, and all he did on that deload was do really light intensity banded work and build up volume in the next goal that we had in mind. So for example, right now we shifted the goal to the full planche. And so on this deload week, I told Joshua, hey, we need to go to the gym and we need to do banded sets of full front lever as well as banded sets of full planche. Now for the full front lever, we simply did that to maintain, because I didn't want him to do any dynamics. I just wanted him to maintain his really solid front lever hold without generating much fatigue. So we just did banded front lever holds. But for the planche side of things, like I said, in my deload weeks, I like to expose the person to the next goal that we have in mind, but at a very small amount of intensity. So I told him, go in and start doing full banded planche holds. Now, what this allowed me to do was, okay, see where the bottleneck is again. Of course, it's his protraction. We knew this. We've been knowing this, so we know it's going to be kind of a similar process again. But I more wanted to see how he felt in that movement, and so I asked him, how does it feel? He said it feels pretty good, and so I was really happy that we were able to build up a lot of good habits and connections in the straddle that turned out to transfer really well to the full planche. And so we exposed his body at a very light intensity over the course of this deload week to the full planche. And so what this allowed us to do was hit the ground running right away in this next mesocycle of our training. And so this was the last program that we implemented to get Joshua his first full planche hold. Now it's important to note, I'm making this video a few days after Joshua sent me his first ever full planche hold. Next week, he's already gonna have a clean full planche for like 5 seconds. And then next month, he's gonna have a fingertip full planche hold. I'll get into why he will continue to progress at this rate at the end of the video. But let's talk about what bridged the gap between a straddle planche and the full thing in just 1 month again. So at this point, we're using the same kind of approach. We're starting off with something super intense, and then we're gonna build up volume in that position so we understand the proper form, and then we might do a little bit of accessory work. Now, this was his planche program for this last month stretch. We start off with light banded planche attempts. So basically, I told him, use the lightest resistance band possible that will allow you to get some sort of hold, right? 3 to 5 seconds, just something. I don't care about the form. Form breakdown is okay, but we want to just push the intensity in that full planche position with the light band. And then, again, same thing. We would accumulate a lot of volume with banded full planche, but this time use a band that was much higher resistance to reinforce proper activations. And so again, judging from the fact that 70 to 90 seconds was the sweet spot for him, I decided to keep this. But hindsight, if I were to do it again, I would give him more volume because I think he could have progressed even quicker quicker at this point. Now that his body is becoming more and more adapted to the planche and the central nervous system is learning, the amount of fatigue that the planche is starting to generate is becoming less and less for his body. Then again, we started incorporating more high volume type sets with his front lever. So I decided to just, you know what, play it safe. Let's keep it as it is. And now the last exercise you're going to see on this planche program for this month is going to be pseudo planche push-ups with a planche lean in the form of a cluster set. Now, the goal here was more technical focused. Again, keeping that protraction. And in my opinion, pseudo planche push-ups are a great way to teach your scapula how to not only move, but stay protracted through a dynamic movement. With something like presses, it's really easy to lose protraction, but still get the rep. However, with push-ups, it's really visible, and it's going to completely kill your push-up trajectory and performance in general, whereas in a press, it will actually help it, especially if you're really good with straight arm strength. And so I wanted to target Joshua's weakness again. This is my whole goal, is with that final exercise is to target whatever his biggest weak point is. And it's still at this point is the protraction. And so I want to hammer this away by doing a cluster set where we do planche push-ups and then follow it up with a planche lean. Really trying to emphasize staying tall and high and maintaining protraction throughout the entire push-up. And I was very adamant about this throughout the course of his planche journey. We need to really focus on building the right habits. Also, you're probably asking, well, earlier we were doing Zanetti presses and we were doing banded scapula push-ups. Why did you swap those out? Because we need variation. We cannot keep using the same exercise for a prolonged period of time. It's gonna eventually lead to a plateau. The moment you let your body adapt to some sort of pattern is when the progress is gonna start to slow. And so my goal again is, you know, we have all these tools, all these exercises we can use to fix the problem or the bottleneck, but we also have multiple tools that solve the same problem. And so I reach in and I choose a new tool that's still targeting the same issue. With this variation, we are able to repeatedly shock the nervous system and give him a slight variety and stimulus that keeps those neurological adaptations fresh and fast. And so 1 month on this program, roughly 4 weeks, he sent me his first full planche hold. And that's Joshua's story from tuck all the way to full planche in 5 months. There's no magic behind it. We simply took a step back, identified his bottlenecks at every step of the way, respected the principles that I talk about in my videos of specificity, fatigue management, and progressive overload, combined them together repeatedly, and adhering to these principles ultimately got Joshua the full planche in just 5 months. Anyone can do it. Literally anyone can do it. I have other students who might achieve it quicker than Joshua that I'm currently working with. So it's all going to be based on your programming, your training intuition, and your mindset. This is one thing I want to touch on heavy, and is the reason why I said earlier that next month Joshua is already going to be doing fingertip full planches, is because of his mindset. He never gets down on himself. He's always pushing to the next thing. If he has a bad training, he doesn't care because he auto-regulates and he just makes it a boring banded day, right? And on days he feels good, he's gonna push that shit to the next level, you know? And that's what I love about him, is he listens to me very well. He respects the general outline of the program I've given him, and he's never negative. You know, he's never negative, never ever beating himself up. He's always looking forward to the next thing without beating himself up. Many people are stuck on straddle planche for no reason at all. Like, they're literally stuck there because of their mindset. That's it. You are literally stuck in a plateau, most likely because of your mindset. Because you go into a training, you try to do an attempt every day, you beat yourself up, your ego spikes again, it tells you to attempt again, you beat yourself up, and it's just a constant loop, and you're stuck in this like ego battle with yourself. Drop the ego, take a step back, and you're gonna achieve the full planche. It's no different than any other skill. People put the full planche on this crazy pedestal. Bro, it's as easy as a front lever or a muscle up or a handstand. It's the same difficulty as any other skill in calisthenics. Your mindset is what is keeping you from achieving this skill. Sure, you can talk about like programming, like I was able to identify his bottlenecks and identify the perfect amount of volume for him. But it's the underlying type of person he is and the mindset that he has that allowed him to make this type of progress. And you pair his mindset with my knowledge about the sport, and that's what you get. You get 5-month full planche from zero. Like, rewatch this video and really examine how I break everything down and my thought process behind things. If you can learn to think like this, you can unlock any calisthenics skill you want. For the longest time, for me, one arm front lever was like, oh, like, that's insane, you know? And I realized like it's no different than any other skill, and that's what allowed me to achieve it so fast. Start thinking logically, drop your ego, regress if you need to, and you will achieve the planche faster than you can ever even imagine. And so I cannot wait to keep sharing Joshua's progress, because he is going to continue to shock the world. Front lever touch, front lever pull-up, fingertip planche push-ups, Maltese, soon we might start. So there's a lot of fun things in the works. And Joshua, if you're watching this, man, I could not be more proud of you, man. You are a beast, my friend, and it's been a pleasure working with you over these last 5 months, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds. I hope you guys took something away from this video, and I hope it helps you guys out in some way when it comes to your static skill training. If you guys have any questions, feel free to join my community Discord server that will be linked in the description below. Myself and other high-level athletes will be in there to answer any of the questions that you guys have about calisthenics programming, basically anything calisthenics related. Head over to the Discord and we will take care of you guys. Also in the description will be linked Joshua's Instagram. I highly recommend that you guys check it out. He's going to be an absolute insane athlete over the next upcoming years, and I'll see you guys in the next one.